Hello and welcome to Life and Leadership Podcast with David Gadberry. I'm so glad you're joining us today. It's a great day and I'm excited to talk to you again about healthy leadership. As you know, Life and Leadership Podcast is all about leadership in real life. We don't want to just talk about leadership in kind of a vacuum. We want to talk about how leadership works in real life situations and circumstances. And I really believe that it's important we talk about healthy leadership because in today's culture, in today's world, there's a lot of leaders that seem successful, but they're not really healthy. There's a big difference. There are some leaders that are even what the world would call successful. Their peers would call them successful. But when you start peeling back the layers, you start seeing things that look really, really unhealthy and ultimately end very negatively for everyone involved. So we've been talking about the characteristics of healthy leadership. And so we want to talk today about the fact that healthy leaders are listening and learning leaders. A characteristic of a healthy leader is a person who's a listening and learning. So I want to make sure that if you follow us, please, if you're part of our leadership community, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Gadberry Leadership Coaching, and our podcast on iTunes, which is Life and Leadership with David Gadberry. And then I think we're on several other platforms, and we've got people listening to us from all over the United States. And we're really excited about that and how that audience is growing. But you could help us because our goal is to add value to as many people as we possibly can. That's what I feel like my calling is, to see the potential in people, help them to recognize it, and then help them to draw it out and reach it. And become everything that they were created to become. So I want to be a part of that. And if you could help me with that, that'd be fantastic. And you can help me with that by subscribing and sharing and letting people know about the things you're learning with Gadberry Leadership Coaching. Also, if you want to know more about us and what we do and how we interact with companies and teams and leaders, you can go to gadberry.org, and that tells you everything you need to know about our coaching company. So thank you so much for being a part today. And I just want to get right in and take just the next few minutes and teach you on this healthy leadership characteristic of listening and learning. And what this is all about is the importance of continually being mentored and trained as a leader. How do you listen and learn from the right voices? Well, let's talk about that first and foremost. Right voices. It's very important that when we are choosing who we are listening to, who we are learning from, that there are people who have achieved and who have accomplished and who can take us where we want to go. Now, I listen to a lot of people and I have different levels of mentors in my life. I have mentors that are really close to me. I have mentors that these are people that are my confidants in life, that I can talk to them about anything, and we can really come together on accountability and all those kind of things. Then I have other mentors or teachers, if you will, in my life that are not as close, but still are people who I have a relationship with. Then I have mentors who, what I call distant mentors. These are people who I read their books. I listen to their podcasts. I watch their talks. And the truth is, some of them I get to meet at different times, and some of them I will never meet. But the truth is, I can still learn from them. Now, let me just make one kind of step back from this and say, I believe you can learn from anyone. There's an old proverb that says that the person who refuses to receive correction is stupid. It actually says that in the Bible. And I agree with that. And the reason is because if we are a person who will refuse to learn and we refuse to be corrected in any way, then not only are we stupid because we refuse that, but we remain stupid because that correction and that instruction could have made us more intelligent, more effective, more wise, and we refuse to receive it because of our pride or rebellion or whatever the case may be. So in saying that, I'm saying that in every situation, no matter who you come in contact with, who you're working with, if you have a bad boss or a horrible person that you've met, even in those cases, there are things to learn. We should never be so prideful as to think that we couldn't learn from anyone. Because you're not learning about the same things all the time. And even if you're not learning how to do something, you could be learning how not to do something. So the mentality of a healthy leader then is not of making sure that I'm in the right circles all the time, or making sure that I am seen or impressive to the people who I think are important. But it's having that mentality that says, I'm always learning, I'm always growing, I'm always reading a situation, I'm listening to what people are saying, I'm taking in information, I'm looking at circumstances, I'm watching how people are being dealt with, all of this, and I'm learning and learning and learning and learning. I went to a conference, I think it was the very first Catalyst conference with Andy Stanley and John Maxwell years ago. And when I went to that, it was really amazing. But one of the things that really inspired me was there was a man there, and I want to say it was Howard Hendricks, I believe it was. But he got up and he was rather old then, but he talked about how every year he goes back to college. Every year he takes a college course of some kind just to hone his skills, just to get his mind moving, just to continually be learning. Now, if a leader on that level is still learning and growing and reading and studying and processing and achieving, then what would make us as leaders trying to become or trying to reach our potential, having worth in and of ourselves, but realizing we've got a lot more to do, what would make us think we wouldn't need to have that kind of thinking? So healthy leaders are listening and learning leaders. Now, I say listening and learning because the bottom line is, if you're not listening, you're not learning. And that's the truth. If you're not listening, you're not learning. Now, listening, we all know, we've all been to the communication classes, we've all heard the talks about communication, that you can't just be talking, and even when you're listening, you have to be an active listener. You can't be a listener that's just thinking about what you're going to say next while the other person is finishing what they're saying. But you have to truly be listening, and not just listening to them, but as Stephen Covey says, listen empathically, which means we put ourselves in their shoes. I'm not just listening to what they're saying, I'm listening to where they're coming from. It's a very important thing to do. I want to take it a step further. Listening is not just, communication is not just listening and not just talking. Communication is mutual understanding. So if you haven't listened to the point that when you walk away from the situation, scenario, conversation, teaching, whatever, if you don't have understanding, if you're not on the same page with the person who was communicating, then you didn't listen. So I want to encourage us all to really dig in. And one of the biggest thieves of being an effective listener is our need to be heard. Our need to be heard constantly battles against our need to listen. And I just want to say this, especially if you're young and you feel a strong need to impress or to let people know you do know something. I remember somebody told me years ago, people aren't really going to acknowledge you as a leader till you're about 30 years old. Because they just don't think you have a lot to offer until then. Now, I have to tell you that that wasn't true in all cases. But in a kind of general sense, it was true. Because there are a lot of people that really, they kind of gave me grace when I was younger and said, well, he's pretty smart, or that's cool that he knows that, or whatever. But it wasn't really till I got a little older that they heard me. And I think that we have this, because of that, we have this desperate need to say, I'm here, I've got something to say, I've got something to contribute, I've got something that matters. And here's what I'm finding to be true. You will get more opportunity to be heard when you become an effective listener than you ever will if you are constantly and persistently trying to be heard. I love the phrase that says, don't ever be the smartest person in the room. I think a lot of leaders especially love being the smartest person in the room. They love having the most experience in the room. Listen, if every room you're in, you're always the smartest person in the room, you're not learning, you're not growing. If every room you go in, you're the most experienced leader in the room, you're not learning, you're not growing. Because what you're doing is you're gaining a lot of good feelings about appreciation that other people have from you because they're learning from you. But when are you learning? If you're teaching people they need to be learners and they need to be leaders and they need to learn how to change and grow, when's the last time you changed? When's the last time you grew? So it's very important that we understand healthy leadership isn't about being heard all the time. That's egotistical driven leadership. Healthy leadership, leadership that's growing, it has health, that it's not sick, it's not defunct, it's not messed up, it's not manipulative. It's leadership that truly will listen. We avoid so many problems when we listen. We avoid so many misunderstandings when we actually learn to listen. And most importantly, we learn so many great lessons when we learn to listen, or we begin to listen. I think it's important for us to just get down to the nitty-gritty on why we struggle with listening, why we struggle with that attitude of learning. And it goes back to what I said just a moment ago, ego. Whether we like it or not, and whether we're really thinking this consciously or not, when we refuse to have that mindset or attitude of learning or listening, what's really happening there is we're saying, you have nothing to offer me because I already know that. And most leaders I know can't stand know-it-alls because there's nothing you can teach them. You know, I love to help people with their potential, but when I run into somebody who they already know everything and they've got an answer to anything, and anything you say to them, they have to one-up you, or anything they say to them, they already knew that, and here's something for you to learn. And to be honest, those kind of people are very hard to deal with. But if we all want to be truthful about it, we all have a little bit of that in us. Our ego drives us to want to impress, or to want to know things, or to want people to know that we know things. What I'm experiencing, though, the older I get, and I don't know how you feel about this, and I'm not even sure it has to do with age as much as it does wisdom. I'm learning that I know a lot less than I thought I did. I'll be 51 years old just shortly, and I feel like I'm learning more now than I've ever learned in my whole life. That's not to put down youth or to belittle people who are young. When we're young, we're just so excited and zealous about life, and we're learning a lot of things, and so we just really want to espouse those things we're learning, and it's important for us to be heard and for us to let people know that we do have something to contribute. And it's always important that you do speak up when it is right for you to do so. But I find the older that I get, if I really want to learn, the more listening I do. So you might be asking, okay, so you're telling us that healthy leaders are learning and listening leaders. Well, that's a given, because if people aren't, then they wouldn't be healthy. And so how do you do that, though? Over time, when you have studied a lot, when you've listened to a lot of speakers, when you've gone to a lot of classes, when you've had a lot of your own experiences, how do you maintain a fresh mindset of continual learning, continual improvement, and keep an attitude where you want to listen? Well, let's talk about that. I think first of all, and if you're taking notes, you might want to write this down. The first thing is always remain curious. Be curious. Want to know how things work. If there are things that you don't know, or things that you hear talked about, or something that you read and it piques your curiosity, follow that train of thought. Begin to study on it. Write notes about it. Look up more research it, and talk to people who are experts in the field, or whatever the case may be. But find things that you really want to know about and that interest you or draw out your curiosity, and chase them down. So number one, remain curious. And the only thing that keeps us from doing that is to just be obsessed with thinking we know more than we actually know. When you remain curious, then you'll go deeper than you normally would. This is one thing that I find really disappointing in a lot of leadership. And sometimes even in my own leadership or my own teaching and communication, I feel like I can do this as well. And it's very disappointing when you think about it. We just kind of function and operate on the surface. We'll barely touch on issues. And when we're communicating, we'll give a talk and we try to be inspirational and hope-filled and up and positive, and that's good, and we need to do that. But sometimes we allow that to keep us from going a little deeper and digging into some of those things that might really be meaty and significant that people could really digest. And honestly, I think it has to do with what I'm going to tell you second. So first is remain curious. Second is give yourself time to think. I think we live in a culture where we don't go deeper and we don't really process things in our mind because we don't give ourselves time to think. We're moving from one thing to the next, and we're talking to people in passing, and we're reading things as quickly as we can. We're reading blogs, skimming through them, missing some of the best parts of them because we don't want to take the time to actually read. We're listening to podcasts and trying to get that done as fast as we can instead of just taking time to think. And do we have time that's blocked out in our week where we actually process strategic thoughts, where we actually are learning and digging and growing and saying, here's what I'm trying to achieve. How do you do that? And if that's how you do it, well, in what ways am I going to be able to accomplish those things in order to get to that goal? Instead of just stopping and saying, this is the goal I want, here's what I need to do, and then trying to take steps without really thinking them through. People get themselves in a lot of trouble. So the first thing is remain curious. The second thing is take time to think. So remain curious, take time to think. These are two ways to be that healthy leader that's always and consistently listening and learning. I think the third thing is if you want to stay fresh and be a person who wants to listen, I think it's very important to be interested, to truly care about what other people think. That's surprising, and I mean this literally. It's surprising how often we get so caught up in trying to build what we're building and trying to accomplish the goals we're trying to accomplish and trying to lead the people who are following us and trying to make sure we're getting the results we need. That so much, and we're taking so much information in and so processing so much that sometimes I think that we really don't care what other people are saying. I think that we listen to people out of almost an obligatory attitude. I've got to listen because it would be rude for me not to listen, but I really don't care what you're saying. And to me, it's very sad if we would surround ourselves with people who we feel like are experts and really good at what they do, and we're so glad they're on our team, yet we won't listen to them. That is ridiculous, and it's a complete waste and a lack of wisdom. And you didn't get where you are at this point in your life on your own, and you're not going to go further on your own either. And I think if you want to be fresh in this ability to listen, truly care about what other people think, truly care about their opinion, truly care about the time they spent in thinking through and processing and determining and deciding what they would say. And then also, don't just be interested and care about what they have to say, but truly listen. Don't listen with your radar up for certain keywords that are going to cause you to be able to respond with something really smart you want to say, but truly listen to where they're coming from. Hear what they're saying. Get their perspective. It's different to hear the words that are coming out of their mouth. That's different than actually gleaning their perspective and walking away really going, man, I get that. I understand that. I have a new understanding of that person and the way they see this, and I have a new understanding of the way the situation really is. A lot of things are uncovered by that when we really care about what other people think and we really listen to them empathically and we try to glean their perspective and not just their words. Man, it can really open our eyes. The fourth thing is, if you want to be a continual learner and a continual listener so that you're a healthy leader, I think we have to acknowledge we don't know what we don't know. This can be a real problem. And the problem is, when we don't know what we don't know, that's called a blind spot. Now, that can be a real problem because there are a lot of people that have blind spots. I know guys that are really poor communicators, but if you ask them, they think they're excellent. I know people who are very informational with their teams, but not very inspirational. But they think that they're very inspirational. They have a huge blind spot when it comes to that. There's so many examples you can give, and all of these are a result of us not knowing what we don't know. Now, that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's so true about so many things that when we go into something, there's a lot of things we know, a lot of things we've learned, a lot of things we're still trying to figure out, things that we're aware we don't know, that we're trying to ask and research and study and think about. But there are many things that we don't even know enough about the subject or enough about the situation to even know we don't know that. So it can be a problem and it can be a blind spot, but if we really realize and acknowledge there are things that we don't know, then it can be a great learning experience. Well, how do I fix that? I mean, my goodness, if I don't know it, then how do I find out? Here's how. You surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to tell you. You surround yourself with people who have gone before you, people who have done things you haven't done, people who know things you don't know, and you ask really good questions. And you allow them to speak into your life and to point out blind spots. People are really scared to do this, really afraid. I find that as I'm coaching people, whether it's teams, business teams, or whether it's marriage relationships, or whether it's sports teams or sports coaches or whoever, I find that one of the greatest challenges for leaders is the ability to be vulnerable. Because we're so driven, because we're so prideful in a lot of ways, we're just not sure we want to go there. I don't want to admit there's something I don't know. I don't want to admit that, maybe I'm weak in an area. And so it's surprising how many people just don't want to entertain the idea of bringing a coach into their life to help them ask good questions that uncovers limiting thoughts, uncovers obstacles that they didn't know were there, reveals blind spots so they can move further in their life. It's very interesting. The leaders that can move the quickest and also get the farthest are leaders who are unafraid to be vulnerable, unafraid to surround themselves with other people who will speak truth to them, who will reveal blind spots to them, who will be encouraging, but in a way that helps them to uncover areas that are holding them back. Vulnerability is so important because that's what is happening. The things that you don't know, you begin to find out, you begin to learn, and it changes the whole dynamic. And it gives you the opportunity to stop limiting yourself. And so
I'm going to stop there. Those 4 things are very important, and that'll help you be a learner, it'll help you be a listener, and it'll help you be a healthy leader. So thanks so much for being a part of Life and Leadership with David Gadberry today. I'm so excited that you're a part of our leadership community. And I want to encourage you that if you're learning anything or if you're receiving anything from this, please, send us, comments or questions. Feel free to rate us. It'd be very helpful with us on the iTunes podcast, Life and Leadership, if you would rate us and make a comment or review us. It just helps with the algorithm and people adding value to more people. It gives us the opportunity to be seen by more people so that we can influence their life and help them learn some of the things that maybe we're learning. So if you want to do that, that would be great. Also, you can subscribe on the YouTube channel or on the iTunes and share this. Say, hey, I'm learning some new leadership stuff. Would love for you to check it out. And that would be very helpful to us. Our goal is to add value to as many people as we can to help them see their potential and to reach it. And then if you will have questions, we would love that we have times on the podcast where we will answer questions that come in. And I haven't done that in a couple of podcasts, but we're going to do it next week. So please feel free to send questions about leadership, any kind of questions, to connect@gadberry.org, and we will get to those questions as soon as we can and try to help you in that way. So again, thank you for being a part of Life and Leadership. Glad you're a part of our leadership community, and I want to encourage you, go out and add value to somebody's life today. And I'm going to make a guarantee, like I always do. If you'll add value to someone else's life today, I guarantee you the greater value will be added to you. So God bless you. Have a great day.